Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice day so far, and I feel that you are all ready for our networking reception after our last block. So you should not be leaving before you have eaten with us and discussed and make a more connection and exchange your cards and agreed about new projects. So please let me introduce last block of the session with the continuity of care session entitled Improving Patient Safety and Outcomes in the Continuity of Care with the help of digital technologies based on AI-derived algorithms. And I'm delighted to introduce the moderator of the session, Daniel Arnal, who will be guiding us through this session. It's really, for me, pleasure to be organizing this conference together with Daniel, because our paths crossed, but we found them back, and it was really nice collaboration so far, and I'm really looking forward to this session. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mirka. It's a pleasure. It is true, Mirka and I have been working together for so many years in the European Society of Anesthesiology, and then she left us to build this great organization, well, to continue building this great organization of the European Patient Safety Foundation. And I'm very glad to co-host, the Censor is very glad to co-host the meeting and having this panel talking about something that is very relevant, continuity of care, which is probably one of the issues that we have in terms of patient safety that has been kind of overseen by the different professionals throughout the years. But also talking again, as we started in the morning, about technology based on AI and how can it improve outcomes. And I will ask the panelists to talk about their experience. They are very well experienced into the topic, and I hope that they will share with us the real experiences about this, not something talking about big sentences, but what is really taking their heart and the barriers and the difficulties and the benefits that they see in this technology. To start, I have a few slides to introduce the importance of what we are talking. If this works, here or there.
Magic.
No, that's it. It did vibrate somehow, so it was activated. So we have here Eulogio Moreno. Eulogio Moreno is an earlier patient that may be part of a process. He's probably having some illnesses or some disease and may have some issues within the time. And I want to ask you, because I want you also to be active, to participate initially with some polls, but then also with some questions. If you can scan the Slido. If you believe, before talking about this, and with all that we've talked through the day, that the role of the technology in improving the continuity of care for this patient, if he has to go, for example, into a surgery, may be helpful, maybe not that helpful, maybe even neutral, or has anybody really done something using this? What is your opinion about that? Wow, we can go home. Or not. Maybe we can address some issues that we can find in the path, right? Okay. 40 people, pretty much, yeah? Good. Okay, thank you for your feedback. Let's talk about it. Talk about about continuity of care. If I would be the rheumatologist for Eulogio, I may see the continuity of my treatment, the treatment of his arthritis, and it might be okay, pretty much stable throughout the time. And I may have this idea of it, and especially if I have a consultation in September of this year, I would say, he's okay, right? But what if I am the orthopedist, the surgeon orthopedic, and I have to treat him for a fracture? And within in my hospital, we have issues initially with setting into surgery in a good time for the surgery. And initially, the standard of care is not well achieved. And we could say that Eulogio would have a risk for his safety in the process. And we could say, okay, here is a moment in May when he had the hip fracture that he was threatened by safety issues. But then the system would recover. At the end, he had the treatment and everything went well from the point of view of this orthopedic surgeon. If we think of he's diabetic, and if we think of his diabetes, it was usually well, but in the post-operative period of the hip fracture, he had a discompensation, and again, was not well addressed by the system, and it was like this. And also had some issues with the mood, and his primary care physician realized that he was, and a bit late, he was starting with a depression, started treatment, and was recovered. But we can see all these different silos of professionals attending Eulogio, but Eulogio, what really is a compendium, a mixture of all these. So if we see the dotted line, it's actually his quality of life, and might be dropped, and this is his journey throughout this period of time, and it is what it really matters, not the silos. And the problem in healthcare, as we used to have it in our countries, is that we have primary care, hospital care, within the hospital, different silos of professionals, and the continuity of care is sometimes into risk. If we look to any perioperative patient journey, we would have the perioperative out of hospital that may have some GP intervention or not, the preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative in hospital. But again, the surgical process as such should have a continuity until the patient is recovered back home and back to his normal life if possible. And what we have also, it's different resources between when the patient is still in theater or in the initial ICU, if he needs, that might have one nurse for every patient, or if he goes later on to an intermediate care, that could be 3 to 4 patients per nurse. If he goes to the ward during the day, maybe one nurse per every 7 or 8 patients, depending on the hospitals, or in the night, one every 7 to 15, or like my hospital is one every 16 patients. A nurse taking care of 16 patients in a night is quite a nightmare for her, and especially for the patients. And then back home, there's no nurse. There's the family, or even not the family, or somewhere where he's the patient. So we have throughout the continuity of this patient different levels of attendance. So. And this is an open question. Again, you can type what issues in patient safety could you hope that this technology that we have been talking about during the day could help Eulogio, especially those based on AI? Any ideas from what has been talked, from your experience? The panelists can also participate, of course. Okay, I see the first answer. You can even vote different answers. So it's, apart from yours, you can vote for another answer and so on. So good, you can continue on this, and I can finish with my 2 final slides. Or not. I'm going to stay for it. Go for it. Nice. Okay. I won't be able to read them, I see. It's, okay. So we can see here predict factors, integration of healthcare system, telemonitoring, information to the family, how to help the patient, medication family. Wow, this is a lot. We are asking too much for the, even for the AI, it's kind of too much, isn't it? The truth is that the opportunities are enormous. Just, I see there that the system is telling us about the words that are usually, yeah. So, yeah, this technology can eventually be applied throughout the whole process of the perioperative or any process. I'm taking the perioperative journey because it's a very risky journey, complex, and maybe, and also because I am an anesthetist and some of our panelists are anesthetists, where we feel more comfortable. And because it is a good example of where we could have like virtual assistance for patient education that was in the answers, risk prediction using all the data from the health record, real-time surgical guidance during the intraoperative period has been proved, even semi-autonomous or autonomous surgical robots. Prediction of post-operative complication was also in your answers as well. Using telemedicine and remote monitoring in breaking the gap between in-hospital and out-hospital eventually. And also using apps for the patient guided by AI to self-care, to improve self-care. These are just some examples. There are many others that are there, as we could hear this morning in the first talk. So, what do you think, what do you believe is the biggest challenge in implementing these technologies on AI surgical continuity, technology based on AI in this journey that we were talking?
We can pick one.
You can pick one. I don't know if you can pick two. I'm not that aware of the system. Just one? Then, okay. You need to choose. What is the most important? Probably all of them might be important, of course. But what do you think is most important? Right? Okay, you can continue answering. We may go back to this. While you finalize your answers, let me introduce the panel. I want to introduce, I will introduce myself at the beginning because so far the introduction was very basic. I am Daniel Arnal. I am an anesthesiologist working in Alcorcón University Hospital here in Madrid. I am a co-founder and member of the board of CENSAR, the Spanish system for patient safety that we run an incident reporting system in anesthesiology since 15 years ago. And that we've been doing many things from that to improve safety. And also I've been part of the European Patient Safety, the European Anesthesiology Society, the European Society of Anesthesiology and Intensive Care, as member, chair, and now again member of the Patient Safety Committee. So I am very much into this topic since quite a few years ago. I'd like to introduce Jolanta Bilinska. Jolanta Bilinska is the representative of Elogio. Jolanta Bilinska is a board member and co-founder of the World Patient Alliance. And I would like to say hello to Jolanta, very warm welcome, and explain us what is doing the World Patient Alliance in this topic, or what is relevant for the patients. What is your view from the patient's representative that you are?
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you, the President of European Patient Safety Foundation, for the invitation and that I have opportunity to talk to you about this important topic. My journey started from patient safety, and I am so grateful because in 2005, when I arrived to Geneva, and Didier Pité, professor who implemented hand hygiene in Europe, in the world. He explained how to properly wash. We discussed about the liquid for Muslim without alcohol, for Europe with alcohol. So, you know, it was a challenge for me because that time I was in the first group of patient advocates in Geneva. 21 persons were elected around the world. And first time I noticed I met people who think in the same direction, who wants for patient same as I wish. I will be short. But patient safety is in my heart and in my brain for the all time. I was in another organization, also patient organization. From 2009, I am at World Patient Alliance, and this topic, patient safety, is all the time with us. Today, I heard about patient safety in different directions, and I know we need to enlarge and repeat the topic during our meeting in November in Lisbon. But coming back to what patient safety is for us very important because, as you know, it is a triangle. It's patient and the nurse and the doctor. And patient coming to outpatient clinic, to hospital, always has fear, has emotional attitude because he doesn't know what happens, what to manage the disease. And just today we heard a lot how new technologies, how telemedicine, during COVID everybody knew how it helped us to communicate with patients. So I think today this discussion about artificial intelligence, what does bring pros and cons for patient is very constructive. We had 2 weeks ago a conference for all members, and artificial intelligence was also a topic. Patients told us they first of all, we need to do a campaign because patients need to understand that artificial intelligence is not a robot. It's behind all this, there is a person, there is a doctor, there is a nurse, and we just need to explain how it could help by technology that, for example, in 1 week in Poland, country in which I live, it will be an algorithm that you can do electrocardiography and you can know about the heart attack in 10 years. So it is revolutionary. It is also one algorithm for this that you can do electrocardiography and you know about anemia. So these advantages, or in radiology, we know that it saves time for the doctors, for radiologists. There is short of these specialists around the world, not only in Europe. And if they can check and find the solution, there is a very, very positive thing for patients. But to have the symbiosis with artificial intelligence, we need also know the risk, what is behind, and this data protection, what we have in Europe, how to use this space, how we can reimburse this technology, because of course it costs. And patients are not how to say the proper English word, but patients understand all this problem, because some patient advocates, they are stakeholders stakeholders. They work in hospital. For every day, I am also working in the hospital. So we know this pros and cons, and just during the discussion, I think we find a solution.
We will go for that. Thank you, Jolanta. Thank you very much. So I take the idea, patients need to understand what is AI actually.
Yes.
And it's good to understand that this kind of education is needed when we explain to them that eventually we are using some AI equipment to improve their safety. We have Stacey Orsat. Thank you for coming. If there is somebody in the industry that can take decisions, it's Stacey Orsat. She's the president of Masimo for half of the world. Europe is more than half the nation, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and probably somewhere else. Thank you, Stacey. What is Masimo doing in this topic about continuity of care and AI-based technology? Is there anything that you are working on?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. Thanks for having me here. And first of all, I do want to mention, it was mentioned in quick passing, but it's the 15th anniversary of Sensar. Yeah. So very humbled to be working with you also, Mirka, and others who've been influencing around the world all these years. So in working at Masimo, Masimo's a technology inventor, right? And Masimo started as a signal processing company. How can we find information? My work at Masimo started about 20 years ago, and pretty soon into that work, we were working with hospitals saying, how do we identify when somebody needs help? Because all we have is false alarms a lot. We're going to the bedside too often. We don't know what to do. And the reality is I've got a title, but my favorite title now is mom. That's my favorite job. Before that, it was being an aunt to my nephews and having family members. And I know that world of working for MedTech and then going into a hospital with our loved ones, seeing the same thing and worrying about the same thing. How do I know when my family member is okay and when they're not? So the goal at Masimo is always to say, we're the technology side. So what is the problem we're being asked to solve? Let's find the right data. Find that data. And then the second thing, working with experts like Eske, like Oscar, and others, how do people receive that data that they can act on it, right? Going back to communication that we all know about. How do I say something and you hear it in the way I meant it? And in healthcare, that's super tricky. So the last 20 years has been working on how do we identify the information that someone would actually want to act on, and then how do we give it to somebody somewhere that they would do something about it? And of course, we go back 20, 30 years. There's people I know here using stuff from Masimo and other medtech companies. They were all boxes at bedsides in hospitals. And now we've come to the point where people are wearing watches, and we have a W1 wearable device that has pulse oximetry on the wrist. And it could be at home or could be where someone is moving. You guys mentioned telemedicine up here in some of the question answering. The key about that is not about that it's wearable. It's wearable, that's great, because people easily wear things. But it's monitoring me or you when you're doing your regular life stuff. And so when you showed that gentleman there, I wonder about why he had the hip fracture. Like, what was all the regular life stuff happening that could have prevented him falling? Like, why did he fall? There's so much data in our regular life. So now we're doing wearables. And then the question is how to get it to data to somewhere else. Clinicians are busy. You can't just get more alarms. So how does that alarm get to a nurse? I think the projects that Eske is working on, so that when that nurse gets it, he says, okay, I know what to do with that information. Because if Masimo just says, oh, saturation's 98, so what? Okay. Right? So we're working really hard to put those pieces together, and also working in collaboration with many, many other companies. So 12 years ago, Masimo founded the Patient Safety Movement Foundation and worked with over 70 companies to sign the Open Data Pledge, that all data could be shared to make that happen. But then the rest comes to life by collaborating with all of you.
Okay. Thank you. It is true that the pledge for interoperability was there, but this is still pending.
Still a long way to go.
A long way to go, and we have also discussed this during the day. Well, we have the vision from a patient, the vision from somebody who is building technology to make the data available. What can we do with the data? We have two experts. I will start with Eske Aasvang. Eske Aasvang is professor at the University of Copenhagen and also anesthesiologist at the Rik Hospitalet. It's a very busy, very big hospital with 70,000 surgeries per year, so it's a big one, and is performing a great project to monitor and use this data using some AI-driven algorithms for the post-operative period to detect patients that are in risk of deterioration. Please, Eske, explain us a bit more about that and share this with the audience, please.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for inviting me to come here. It's such a pleasure to be in the presence of so many fellow Europeans and Americans also. I mean, this is a global task we have. It's not something just for us, especially not just something for us in a small country up north. So, just a short story. I began my research journey more than 20 years ago under the wings of Henrik Kælet, the inventor of enhanced recovery after surgery. Working with Henrik for 20 years, we've seen how we, by optimizing patients using the standards we have developed together, actually can make the patient journey safe for around 80–90% of the standard patient. Now, what we're left with is the 10–20% of patients who get complications, who don't do as they should according to our standards. That is where I see AI is coming in. We need something totally novel to help us make this challenge manageable. So this talks into the future challenge of the double demographic pressure we're facing. We have too few nurses, too few doctors in the future, too many elderly people to be in the hospitals. We need to drive the change out of the hospitals into the homes. But we need to do it safe for the patients. This is where the AI comes in, and understanding how we use AI in the safest way for that particular patient. Because it will not be safe to be in the hospital without the AI. Could you imagine doing surgery without vital sign monitoring? I don't think any of you would like that. I think it would be feasible. I think the majority of patients would survive, actually. I think we would see that they didn't breathe or were blue in the face or something was bleeding, and we would manage that, and some would die, yes. Well, that is the case in the general ward, and we accept it. I think this is appalling. We have technologies that's proven to work right now. So my aim of this discussion is, why don't we do it?
Thank you, Eske.
Oh, sorry, by the way, I've also made a project that actually, that actually does this. You told me to say it, I forgot it. So we actually built a project, it was a public project, and I'm quite proud because we took it all the way actually to a real product, showing that clinicians can actually go all the way if we want to, and if we collaborate across different specialties. End. Say it.
Thank you, Eske. We may go back to it. And so Eske is working mainly, not only, but mainly in the in-hospital post-operative period. And we have Oscar Cambronero from Hospital La Fe de Valencia. He's also an anesthesiologist. He's head of the perioperative section or unit. And as a perioperative, they have the vision of extending the perioperative, as we were talking, since the very beginning to the very end. So Oscar is using monitoring and AI for prehabilitation and also for rehabilitation. Oscar, please explain us a bit more about your project.
Thank you, Daniel. First, I would like to thank you for your invitation. I'm very excited to be there with sharing my experience. Second, I would like to say, on behalf of the Valencia, I would like to say that we really feel your warm support of all of the Spanish people and maybe all over the world. Thank you. And third, putting the feet
Sorry.
on... No.
We have to say, Oscar couldn't get out of his house just 2 days ago, and so he's made a great effort to be here. So it's really, really amazing to having Oscar with us today.
Thank you, Daniel. Third, coming on the topic, trying to put the feet on the ground, and because we are, during this session, we are talking about some words, telemedicine, artificial intelligence, something that goes on the top, but nobody really knows how we deal with this topic. My experience is to be responsible for perioperative medicine. I think that that's the claim of the patient. The patient asks for this continuity of care, and this is up to us in order to solve this problem, because nowadays, as you show, there is not continuity of care in the perioperative care of the patients, and we need some leaders, surgeons, Eske, or anesthesiologists, whatever, in the hospital, mainly anesthesiologists or surgeons, that be responsible for this full perioperative period from surgical indication to postoperative late recovery. But the problem for the doctors are the complications, but the problem from the patient point of view is that they want this continuity of care. I think that the implementation of remote monitoring is one thing that is very important. It gives some safety for the patient. My experience in this topic starts also with a project in the postoperative setting, trying to keep the same standard of care that we're using in the hospital. Is very positive. The patients receive these feelings very, very welcome. They really feel something special that are remote monitoring, remote review by the doctor, and we try to transfer this experience to the full perioperative period. Nowadays, we're working on monitoring on the early preoperative in order to check the impact of this rehabilitation, because at the end there are not many things that we could do to improve this complication, and one of them is optimize the patient status. Then we use this monitoring for optimized rehabilitation. This also allows us to determine a baseline for the patient. Then we use for fast response in the hospital the standard threshold, but for home monitoring, we use this baseline, and we are able to say when the patient is individualized, personalized recovery according to the baseline of this data. And on the postoperative, the artificial intelligence gives the extra sensitive analysis of this data to see how is the trend of this recovery in order to identify the abnormal deviation of this postoperative pathway and recovery of the patient. And more or less, this is my experience.
Right. It sounds like science fiction somehow, isn't it? Is it very costly?
Not really.
How?
The main issue is that you need to reorganize your resources, human resources, technical resources, and this is very challenging in the hospital to move the standard of care, that is that everyone is responsible for the patient at some single shoot time at.
Right.
And it's not common that anesthesiologists are responsible for the late recovery of the patient.
No, but you're coming into a very crucial point. Is it expensive? And we saw somebody marking it as one of the key issues. It might be more expensive to some to begin with. For the whole hospital system, it's much, much cheaper. I mean, the return of investment, so to speak, is around, 600%. Because every complication you avoid is very costly, but that's normally another place in the hospital, not the department that invests. So we need politicians and decision makers to agree that we are looking at the whole flow of money, not just for that particular department that invests, but I think this is one of the key issues that hinders this implementation.
Right. Very good. We are getting into what is really important here, what are the barriers. Let's talk about this thought from the audience of the interoperability problems. But I want to ask Eske and Oscar that have been working on this. Was that a real issue for you when you started working on both the WARD project and the projects from interoperability? Is it a problem that you are facing when to use the technologies? Is it a barrier as such? Or is a general barrier for the technology?
It's a general barrier, probably when you are giving information from different healthcare systems. In my center, in my experience, it's a big problem, the data security. We are able to work with data on the platform online, but one of the biggest problems, and it lasts more than 1 year, to establish all the patients' data protection and all the data security according to download this data on the electronic clinical record of the hospital. But
right.
Once all the data are on the clinical record of the hospital, there's not a big problem of interoperability. It also allows you to give not only the data about monitoring, but also mix this data with medication, with antecedents of the patient, of anything else that could only in the electronic record of the hospital.
I see.
My answer is perhaps a bit different, because yes, if interoperability doesn't work, of course it's a problem. But why doesn't it work? Because of course you can make it work if you want to. I mean, you can easily program something that actually is able to integrate various data sources. This can be done. We are doing that, you're doing that, other people are doing that. So it's a matter of putting the right resources into doing this, and actually, again, coming back to decision makers, allowing this, but also requesting that, for instance, device producers, others have open API so that you can get the data. I mean, you do that. I mean, other producers don't. And I think they will be dinosaurs. They'll be extinct at some point, because this is how the future of healthcare will be. We need things that can be interswitched.
I totally agree with what's said, and I want to come back to the patient side. I think that sometimes when we get into AI and we get into digital technology, we want to have all the answers and solve everything and then get started. Healthcare, we all have acknowledged, isn't perfect. There's already lots of challenges in healthcare. So moving ahead to put in place digital technology and put in place AI, there's already a lot out there. And there's patients who are desperate for us to start to address the challenges they're facing. Patients are lost every day. I would challenge everybody to say, find a starting point to get started. Because to solve interoperability, you need to know what you're trying to make operate together. And the experience we've had in projects is it's the biggest issue with interoperability is getting everyone around the table to talk about it. It's the behavioral science, not the tech, and not the integration. The part that kills me every time, and Fernando's in my team, he's heard me say this for 20 years, is when we start a project in putting in place, for example, post-operative monitoring on the general care floor or pre-operative monitoring. When the project starts to when the project gets implemented, somebody else dies. And we have meetings about it. We had a death last night. We had a dead in bed. I wouldn't ask you to raise your hands, but you know in your hearts those experiences that you've had where another patient was lost. I would challenge everybody to say that the interoperability of the people is harder sometimes than the tech. And get people around the table and say, where do we start? Because there's a lot of AI in the data and the alarm notifications and who gets information. But the first space is to get together in a small group and say, let's test out what we want to solve for. Let's test the patient failures we've had, and just get around that table, and then begin to solve where does the data need to go to.
Yeah.
Absolutely, data protection has to come in at the very beginning, but getting started, whether it's been the projects I worked on in 2007 or in the hospital with opioid-related respiratory depression or today, it's been the same thing. Don't be afraid to get around the table with 80% of your answers missing, but to get started to solve the interoperability of the people.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I would like to add one thing. I work in the hospital, and every day I meet patients and I meet doctors. What I notice, the young doctor who finish medical school, they came to the hospital, and very often they are not familiar with this technology. So we should see the patient point of view. But this e-consultation or e-prescription, they are just learning this during the whole process. And then there are so many errors, because in this continuity of care. One doctor prescribes this doses of medicine, and then when the patient is putting from ICU to internal department, they are often changes and in medicine, in doses, and this error is after explained, the computer add 2-0, and that's why the doses is so high. Only nurse or doctor notice. So I think it is also a good point to prepare the future doctors, or during the first year of work, they should be trained in this, yes, artificial intelligence, and then they will be better prepared to have this better care for patient.
Right. And what about Jolanta? The patient-professional relation. So we are putting a monitoring. Is the patient scared of not having the nurse checking personally on the patient as usual because they are monitored remotely?
Yes, of course, but you know, this is like in life. If something is foreign, is something you do first time, you have natural fear. It is the psychological process. But if you explain the patient that we are using for your monitoring these wearable devices, we know in this screening examination, shorter time, better results, then and somebody from professional will check it, nurse, doctor, etc. So the patient also adjusts. People adjusted to many things. It has changed in the last 20 years, the healthcare. So we need to just find a way how we explain to patient how to do a proper campaign, that they understand it is at this time. So it is a symbiosis for these issues. We cannot avoid this. This is a process.
Okay.
I think that
you have experience on this, don't you?
Yes, and I would say that actually the technology should also document that it frees up nurses' time to be with the patients. So instead of having hours spent on documenting just for documentation's sake, it should actually free up nurses' time and then allow them to go see the patients. But you should also ask the nurses not just to sit in the room, but actually see the patients. Sorry. But that's something also we should work on. But one thing I'm missing in the whole range here is actually...
You mean that the range that is
here?
Yeah.
So the the answers there is actually evidence. Do we have enough evidence to say this is good enough? Well, I believe so, yes. But why don't we then use it? So for me, it's a big challenge in medicine that we have so many things we do which are not evidence-based. Every day we do things that are not evidence-based. We put in urine catheters. We give this and that drug and whatever you do, and some of them harm the patients. But whenever we try to take that away, we demand evidence. Now we come with technologies that actually are evidence-proved, etc. It's still not implemented, and it puzzles me why. So I think that is something we really need to understand. Where is this resistance coming from? Because we all think it's a great idea. Somebody don't.
Anybody from the audience that would like to guess why, or have another question or some comment or whatever of this very interesting discussion? I will go. I'm multitasking.
It's like a talk show.
Thank you. Thanks for this great panel, and I'm very lucky to have representatives of each key stakeholder of the question I have, yes? So let's all come together and say Eske has developed an app, yes, or a solution, artificial intelligence based. He has developed it in the hospital of Orsat and Jolanta, yes? So these are your patients. And some of the devices that you're using are Masimo, Medtronic, Philips. My question is, who owns the data?
What? Sorry, say it again?
Who owns the data?
It's very easy, the patient.
Oh,
The
right.
patient.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Who can use the data? Can Masimo use the data? Can Medtronic use the data?
If you ask the patient when they're admitted, if we would like to use your data for commercial or scientific purposes, would you agree? I think it's very easy. You can ask the patients this. This can be a standard. And I think it's respectful. And actually, around the 3,000 patients, 3,500 patients we now have in our database, 2 have said no. We simply just asked them. People are okay with this.
That's your experience, Eske. What about in the hospital? You feel that they would be comfortable if they learn that their data is used in commercial purposes, and the same for Masimo? Would you feel that they feel comfortable, and would you feel comfortable using that data?
It's
a very relevant question.
In my experience, the biggest challenge was that the data are in the electronic clinical record, because in the meantime, we are not able to easily use this data from the remote monitoring directly from the platform. Then who is the owner of the data? The patient and the hospital. That's the only way. Outside the clinical trial, the owner of the data is similar to the data that you collect from the ward. The same, or from the operating room.
It should be no discussion about that. All the regulation across
the
Europe
legal
says that
it is an important point, though, because the regulations don't apply in early invention phases. So the use of things pre-regulation have very little regulation. And so in this space of tech and AI, it's really young. So and you don't find the monograph like you would with a drug that explains everything, right? In the AI and tech world, oftentimes you are assuming things. It's hard to find the description. So it is good to ask, and it is good to reinforce standards. And I think that's the importance of the medical community in understanding who's the expert. You talked about anesthesiologists, there's some biomedical engineers here, et cetera. To really understand who is the expert and who has that information and not assume it. So, because it is vitally important. Yeah.
Coming back, the owner of the data is the patient and the hospital. You are talking about remote monitoring. Artificial intelligence is one way you approach to the analysis of the data, just this. Yes. You could use artificial intelligence, you could use news to score, you could use some other approach, it's just this, but the data are the data.
So Jolanta,
yes.
She's the patient.
The data, it was really a big issue. We had also discussion what patients, how can be involved in this artificial intelligence process. And in Europe, it is this act about the data functioning that patient needs to fill this consent form for this, that he knows that AI is used in the hospital, and all what is joined with it, it is, as he mentioned, owner, patient, and the hospital. But I want to add one thing more. In my country, from January 2025, it will be a new regulation which joined data and ethical issues. So it will be all combine all doubts for patient. It will be all explained in a special regulation. And I think it also helps us to explain to patient how is this process important, not only for cardiology, you know, for ophthalmology and these diseases, but how it is also important in managing the work in the hospital. So we will explain how this chat speaking with in explanation about the disease and how prevent the disease, or how monitor, how change habits, how change lifestyle, how implement the good food. You know, doctors, nurses don't have enough time. So this artificial intelligence could be also help for better health literacy for patients.
Good. We have another question.
Yes, I'm Rügebeck from Berlin. I think AI is a very, very great opportunity to get better, but it also has a bias because it is as good as the data you feed in it, and it's only the data you can get easily. So if I have an example, if you have an old patient with a hip fracture and he has complications like renal failure and so, and you don't have the data, did this patient drink in the last 2 hours or didn't he had anything to drink in the last 24 hours? I think that is a very big difference, but if you don't have data like this, the AI can't give you the best results. So how do you think about things like that, data which are very, very easy to get, but nobody gets them, nobody is interested in them, like drinking before surgery?
You mean data that is not within the usual monitoring?
Yes, sure. Yes, like when did your patient had a last glass of water?
Last drink,
yeah?
or something
Real
like
drink,
that.
not a sip of water.
It's such a great question, because to really release the potential of AI, we need as good data as we have. Now, there are two angles to this. One is doctors are rubbish at coding. So codes is just not worth anything to me. So we actually spend tons of man hours looking into the charts and try to fulfill criteria for pneumonia, for instance, instead of just relying on some surgeon claiming there was pneumonia because the patient is coughing. Sorry. The other thing is actually, would you like a system that only works if the data is perfect? Or would you like a system that also works even if the data are not complete? I would definitely like the last one, where the system works in real life. For instance, where there are dropouts in vital sign monitoring because the patient takes a bath or something. I don't need 100% data coverage. My system will still adapt to that information, and maybe the risk calculations then will have a big wider confidence interval, but still it will work. So I think we should have a system that works in the setting that real life is. And sometimes patients forget if they took their pills, for instance. We should still have a system that then, for instance, says, okay, if you forgot it, then you're in the high-risk category just for that sake, because we want to make you safe.
Maria.
I think in future, AI should also include patient-reported outcomes and patient-reported experiences, which are directly measured or entered by the patient. So you can just ask the patient, how is your pain by Alexa voice or whatever. And I think that will be the future, especially with running out of nurses. I think that might be a very big help.
It's not the future, it's the present.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the project that you're doing at your hospital, that looking at the preoperative surveying allows that interaction to start collecting that data, which is very much the present.
I think it's very important, these patient-centered outcomes, and include these patient-reported outcomes such as quality of life, quality of physical exercise, and also we are also working in some other projects that also collect some information about quality of patient sleeping, for example, and this includes that you receive information about something that you are not aware. Then I think it's very important.
I absolutely agree, and my comment is actually in a different field than this. When we soon will come into the area of should we treat, shouldn't we treat? I mean, should we not operate with this cancer patient because we know there is 10% chance of curing and there's a 50% chance of complications? Then of course we need the patient input. What is important in my life, actually? I totally agree.
David.
Hi, Daniel. I just wanted to wind things back a little bit to the gentleman talking about, I can see his frustration at the lack of adoption of some of these technologies. And I wanted to talk about the human component of the human AI interface. And I just wanted to put forward a couple of theories as to why there's a reluctance amongst humans. And in medicine in particular, I think, particularly in my field of anesthesiology and critical care, there is extreme conservatism in the personalities of people that go into the profession, number one. Number two, we're risk managers. And along with that goes, we need certainty before we adopt changes. And you only have to look at the video laryngoscopy, direct laryngoscopy discussion that's been going on for 10 years that appeared to some of us as a no-brainer at least 10 years ago, to understand how difficult it is to implement change and to get practitioners to adopt technology. And thirdly, there's a significant amount of anxiety that exists in the personality structure of lots of medics because of the very nature of what they do and the consequences if they do something wrong. So I think all of those interact and I think, or contribute, perhaps is what I wanted to say, but to implement these sorts of changes or to get people to adopt, there has to be some extremely passionate and energetic people on the ground that sort of hold people's hands through the process. And if we're talking about fighting fatigue in medicine and exhausted, burnt-out doctors that are cognitively overloaded and actually just want to get their job done and go home, and then you come and want to introduce new systems to them, I can see that that it may not be successful unless there are some very elegant procedures in place.
That's very interesting.
It's spot on. I think you're absolutely right. But I think one of the key solutions is leadership. It's actually leadership saying, we're going to do this now. It's going to take time to adapt. But we don't want you to do it just if you want to do it. You have to do it because we know it helps actually. And that also brings me to leadership now having the back of their employees. So let's say my fears, of course, in the States, a nurse, can you be liable if you didn't answer an alert because the system monitors the patient 24/7 and shows you something is wrong? Then you should have known something was wrong, but perhaps you were at another place. Nowadays, we don't monitor. And I think you're equally liable, actually. So I think if you want to have this technology adapted, leadership should have the back of the nurses and trust for the nurses. Sorry, not picking on the US.
Good. Okay. We have 2 minutes left. Jolanta, what would you ask? How do you see the future of this for the patients? Do you think this is going to be the way?
Yes, absolutely. I think it is nowadays only for us any campaign or any suggestion with background, scientific background, why it is so important for patients, how it enables to receive, to monitor health in the body, and that it is a grant to give the diagnosis, to treatment, to better outcomes at the end. So it is the proper way, the best way.
Good. So let me wrap up a bit some notes from what we've been discussed. Thank you so much, all the panel, for these very thoughtful experiences that you are sharing firsthand to the audience. I hope that you have enjoyed. I just wrote that patients need to understand what is this AI that we are talking. So there is some education here, and also it's relevant, and they care for the data protection, which we all agree, of course. Also, that there is a tension between Stacey saying we need the rate data to work on them properly. On the other hand, there is you may have AI to work on not real life data that sometimes have some gaps into monitoring, and as far as we use this technology, it may cover for these issues. And the need for evidence, and keep working for evidence to break some of this human factor also, and through this evidence, understand, do we need to do this? We need to start working on this because we need to make this challenge of detecting the patients that are deteriorating, of the challenge of the continuity of care, being manageable. Because nowadays, we are not managing it properly. So, as final idea, why don't we use it? thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this panel. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you for Mirka and Stefan for this organization, and I hope that we finish well this session.